Hello and welcome to Power of One, Episode 2. I'm Neil Robertson and I'm co-hosting this podcast with Paul McNabb, a Liverpool-based psychotherapist. Paul has been my therapist for almost 3 years now, and it's an honor for me to be doing this with him. I feel like I'm going to say that a few more times before the year is out. In this episode, we're going to unpack the topic of mind versus thoughts, specifically the differences between the two and how you can take positive action in managing your thoughts. Paul, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you again, but just to break down from the beginning. So the way I work, I do life coaching, mentoring, psychotherapy is how I start with everyone. But as clients go along, some clients need it, some clients don't. Some clients prefer it, some clients don't. So the way I'm working with you, Neil, it's not the deep therapy now, as you've been through a lot where we wouldn't have done this podcast then. So it's obviously you're in a position now where your life's changed so much that you just need that little bit of help sometimes to keep you on track, for you to control it. So it's how I work with everyone, really. It's sort of control and thought, and this is why I wanted to do this podcast for the second one, because our thoughts are basically give us this whole delusion of who we think we are. And my job as a therapist, first of all, is to get you to identify thoughts and how your thoughts affect all your decisions. So the difference between thought and mind is so important. And obviously the first podcast was about our childhood. This is going to be a lot about childhood because it's a lot about learned behaviours where our sort of truths come from, our values and beliefs, which is a big topic really in therapy, your values and beliefs, because that's where you think you've come from, that's what you think you are, whether it's religious background, ethnic background, anything. So it's your values and beliefs, but are they yours now as an adult in your current situation, your social life now? Does it fit into these old rules? And for most people, it doesn't. So I think it's really important for anyone who's listening, rather than sort of analyse us, because that's not what it's about. It's about sort of listening to what we're talking about and question yourself on it. So you've got an idea of how your thoughts attack you. If your thoughts are going external all the time in judgment, that's based on your values and beliefs. So that's based on your narrative. So when we judge others, that's based on, well, I wouldn't do that, so why are they doing it? So that's your opinion. That's not the truth. That's just your opinion. That's a narrative. So when anyone does that, which everybody does, it can affect then every decision you make. So without going too much into it, yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to explain that fact that it covers, because some of my clients just need, like, they're going through a big business deal, so they might need that little bit more support in life coaching. Everything else is going great in their life. They don't want to maybe go into the deep therapy, but they want that sort of help just to get them on track and believing in themselves more and get that confidence, because that's where they need to be. I've had people coming to me who are training for marathons and stuff like that, where they don't really need much work in the social life or the mental health. It's just the fact that they need a bit of a confidence boost, and that's where thoughts versus mind comes into it.
Well, I mean, on that point, so educate me a bit on this, because I just want to find out some of the key differences. What are the key differences between thoughts and the mind?
So the two different things, this is the way I see it. I don't really hear other people speaking this way, but this is the theory I've come up with by working with hundreds of clients over the years and working out what we have got in common rather than just what we haven't. So it's the human approach to it. So I see it as our minds here. It's like Buddhism and things like that. They'll say your mind's here. This is where people have panic attacks from. We have heart attacks. All this area around here is where we feel it. People have an asthma attacks, anxiety. We feel it in our chest area. So our thoughts, if we see them as separate, our thoughts, I say, are here. So we hear them. The thoughts then process words, and then it sends it to the mind. The mind then sends out emotions, reactions. So if you're sitting there and you're watching TV, you're perfectly safe. There's no harm coming to you. You're having a cup of tea. But you start running through a process where it creates fear, it creates anxiety. All of a sudden, you're sitting on your own couch and you're having a panic attack. This is a really common thing. So it's like you've created an anxiety with thoughts, which is almost the same as a lion's just run into your living room. But nothing's happening. So once that you sort of realise that nothing's happening, someone might come into the room, your phone might ring, the programme might come back on TV. So straight away, you're drawn back into the present, which then it's a relief. Oh my God, that. But when we're on our own, If our thoughts are going against us, that can be torture. So isolation can feel like torture. So if our process isn't healthy, it's based on thoughts. The thought sends a signal to the mind, and then the mind sends a reaction out. So this goes from all our senses. So what we smell, is that a smell I like? Does that go through a thought process? So think of you for yourself. So think when you smell something that you really like, might be food. So when you smell that, see the thought, identify what it is. So then you might send out good feelings, but if it's a bad smell, your facial expression, I'm like, oh, what's that? You start reacting. You might dramatize it. You're like, oh my God, this is going to make me sick. This is going to make me sick. And we'll keep repeating words. So see how it works.
I'll
You're
actually
sending
associate.
words.
Sorry, just really quickly. I'll actually associate certain smells with good and bad events from my life. It's really weird. So, like, if I'm in the shower, like I've got some molten brown shower gel that I use, and when I smell that, I remember the first time I smelt it, and I've just happened to be having a really good day, and it was summer 3 years ago, and I always go back to that. But then if I
Yeah.
smell certain other things, I remember like like when I can smell fires burning. I know this sounds really weird, but like when I go out for runs at night and it's torturous, but I can smell people burning wood or burning coal or something like that instantly makes me think of all those winter nights I used to go for runs and be out of breath. So like those are two examples that tie in with what you've said.
But where does that fire originate for you? That smell of fire, does it give you a warm feeling? Does it give you a sort of, I like this smell?
Well, yes and no. Like, no, because it reminds me of all the times I would be out of breath running down the road on a cold winter's night. But then obviously there's the nostalgic aspect of, when I was a child at Christmas. So one of the first times that we see fire, usually, is when we're kids and it's Christmas time, I would imagine. Or if you grow up in quite an old house, or like a big house where there's a fireplace. So it's kind of like a double meaning in a weird way
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I remember it for that reason. I'm probably one of the only people who remembers it for that reason, for the negative part. But the positive part, which is where the fire comes in, is probably when you're like 4 or 5 years old and Christmas is this magical time and there's a guy who flies down from Lapland with his reindeer and you believe all these things are possible in life. So I guess it has positive and negative connotations in that respect.
That's a perfect example in how thoughts work. So them
Yeah.
thoughts for you, they've attached the smell of smoke, but when you're running, you're out of breath. But
Yeah.
what did that smell have anything to do with you being out of breath?
Exactly. Yeah. I know.
So see the way we attach, and then you've also told the story of what it brings up for you through childhood, and that all these good memories of Christmas. And most people, years ago, it was always the story of Father Christmas comes down the chimney. And I remember kids going, "We haven't got a fire. How's he getting in?" Do you know what I mean? So it's, or then electric fires come out and things like that. So we're always being drawn. Our human nature is drawn to fire, because if you think about it, fire would have saved our lives a lot, wouldn't it? So if you create a fire, if you go camping, you're in the middle of nowhere, if you've built a fire and your shelter's around the fire, animals won't really approach that fire. They won't come close to the fire because they're scared of the flames, the heat. So you've caused a protection for yourself, haven't you? You've created the protection. And then you can boil water, you can cook food on it. There's all these other things. So we're drawn to it. And if you look back in time, people had coal fires. Now, most people have replaced where the fire was with what? A TV, which is also flickering lights, isn't it? When it was black and white TVs, they weren't as popular. It didn't take off as well. But soon as it turned to colour, people were then absorbed by it. So the different colours, we're all fascinated by lights, aren't we? This is why Blackpool's successful, because of the lights. People go there to see
Yeah.
lights. We've all got lights all over our houses, but we're fascinated by lights. We're drawn to light. So your thoughts attach to all these things the same way as mine do. And this gives us our totally unique way of life, doesn't it? So it's not our mind doing that. It's our thoughts. They're building up a story and they're sending the information back. I almost see like the mind as the hard drive and it's
Yeah.
collecting this data. But is this data true? So if your mind's believing all these thoughts, how many intrusive thoughts do people have a day? How many thoughts do people have which are very negative and it never ends up happening?
Oh
So
yeah.
their minds believing their life's terrible. And they might have not left the house. They might have been sitting in all week, but every day They tell themselves a scenario where they're feeling all this pain inside, like people worrying about World War III, people worrying about all these different problems, when in reality, it's the fact that we've got no control over it. It's
Well, I
the
think
fact that we're sort of, it's like being told by an adult that something's going on and you've just got to sit there and watch what's going on, which is what happens to children who sort of go through parents getting divorced and all these other things, especially in teenage years. So them children have then got to process that life has changed, their safety is being questioned. So that thought process would then be changed during teenage years. So all these different life events can happen, and what you attach to them is unique to you. So say, for example, you got mugged and you could smell a certain smell, certain aftershave or a certain whatever, or BO or whatever, do you know what I mean? And wherever you go, if you attach that the mugging was the smell, see how you could be triggered in any situation?
yeah, big time, yeah. Well,
So the smell of burning could make you feel out of breath. Why? You're better off remembering the Christmas time than the out of breath bit, because the out of breath bit was nothing to do with the smell of smoke. It was just that you were probably struggling for air, and the air you were inhaling, you thought, this is contaminated with smoke.
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and I mean, there's so many other examples of that, like certain perfumes that in my teenage years and my young adolescent years smelt like rejection in a nightclub.
Right.
You think of
So
you'd
see
think
how
of
you're
women in a
attacking.
nightclub and you'd think, oh, it just smells like women who aren't going to take my
Yeah.
number at the end of the night. But that's just what we attach to, isn't it? And it's nothing to do with the perfumes smell lovely, by the way. But it just yeah,
But see the attachment.
yeah.
So is the attachment true? And like just using these examples straight away, that's what I want people to relate to, of how much we do sort of come up with these conclusions. We attach to stuff and we think we're right about everything, or so a lot of people actually think they're wrong about everything. So that's just to do with your insecurities and whether you feel confident and other things like that. So all these, once again, go back into childhood in our learned behaviours. So if your thoughts, which I truly believe in, it's quite controversial, but it's like, it's the education system, it's the parenting is where it's really important. So if you're putting a child into education, which you've got to by law, and it's just a common thing everybody does, but who questions it? Who questions, is school right for your child? So any child who's got ADHD or autism and things like that, their learning is just on a different level. So some children who've got ADHD are actually good at doing schoolwork, but their ADHD will affect them. It may be they don't like cleaning up after themselves, they don't sort of do the looking after themselves, but because they're getting challenged, they don't want to cause upset, they don't want to piss anyone off, so they're good in school. So there's different levels of it, and it's sort of like the high function ADHD, which I'd say I have, and then there's the low functional one, which sort of you haven't got that sort of ability to put it into action. Where my one, it affects me more because I'm basically action packed, where I constantly need to be doing stuff. I find it harder to relax, and I've had to do loads of work on myself to reverse that. So I've got to teach myself how to relax. So all these things that we take for granted, not everyone can do. So once again, it's your own thought process, and then you're attached to people who you think you've got things in common with. So where are we in all of this? So if our mind's here, our thoughts are here, and then we've got this ego, which we think is how the world sees us. But is it how the world sees you, or is it based on your thoughts in what you think the world thinks of you?
Yeah.
How much feedback do you get in life? The things you worry about, your hair, your beard, your clothes, your car, like your smell. Who really cares? Who really cares more than us? How many people are affected if we haven't brushed our hair? Who really gives a shit?
Yeah.
No one. But we do, because why? Because it's bred into us as you've got to look smart. So straight away going to school, you're in a uniform. But when you're in the uniform, when you're in school, for a lot of kids, if they don't fit in to the box that they're meant to, which is sitting still, concentrating, learning information you've got no interest in, and then getting tested on it. So if you fit into that, brilliant, you'll do well. Academically, you'll do really well. But what part of that then teaches you how to be you?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that, honestly, because I've done a lot of thinking over the last few years, and we've talked about this in some of our sessions, but the conditioning that we experience as children, and kind of having to pass different tests throughout our lives, really, and wearing a uniform and being a certain way, and especially when I was going to school in the 90s, and you'd have been slightly before me, but there wasn't really that understanding around things like Asperger's or ADHD and things like this. I don't feel, compared to what there is now. So, people often would try and put you in a box, I feel, or try and pigeonhole you. And then, you grow up with, or I can only speak from my experience, which is what I'm talking about now, but you grow up with certain thoughts. And I'm just interested to know how you think that this conditioning might correlate with a person's thoughts and their own kind of self-judgment and their own sense of self-worth, really.
Yeah, it's also the fact of asking yourself, of going, well, how can it not? Because the examples we've just been speaking about, so I left school in like 95, I think it was, and there was no such thing as ADHD then. There was no such thing as like, even kids with labelled as autism. I don't think autism was registered in that sense. It was more autism from birth, where children were born and severely disabled or something. They classed that as autism. So I think the spectrums, I think we've all got a bit of autism in. I think we've all got a bit of ADHD in us. I think we've all got everything in, because we're all humans at the end of the day. So we've all got a bit of narcissism in us. We should have that till about the age of 18, 19. So all these different effects we should have in us. So we can understand it a little bit more because we've lived it a little bit. Now, over time, as we become more mature, what age do people mature? So what age do you feel like you're a man? For a woman, what age do you feel like a woman? There is no set age. It's based on your life experience, isn't it? So if you grow up and you've got parents, siblings, and you're bottom of the rung, and they do everything for you, and then that sort of person, they grow up, male or female, they grow up, and then they're in the 40s, and the parents still do everything for them. How much self-esteem do you think that person's got? How much confidence in themselves to do something? Now, everyone's being nice. Everyone's trying to be nice to them. They're looking after them. They're going, we love you. You're so special. You don't have to do nothing. Yeah, I'll cook for you. You don't have to learn how to cook. I'll tie your shoelaces. You don't have to learn how to tie your shoes. So where does the line get drawn, where we're sort of made into staying in a child? If we love our children too much, and I know this as a parent, you can make your child sort of stay being a child a bit too long. And it can be doing the washing up. It can be like all these things. Most people now will just naturally do it. They'll do the things for the kids. So you're getting a lot more people now into the 30s who still might live at home. They might still, but they haven't got that sort of self-esteem, because why would you leave something that's so good? Well, like, why would you? You wouldn't, would you? You're not going to refuse it. If, like, you've got a mum and dad and they're making you food every night and you've never had to cook.
Yeah.
But see, the lack of experience then, where the more we teach young kids how to sort of act and to sort of, it builds their self-esteem. So it's not really about them going, oh, you've got to do it yourself. It's sort of teaching them that this is how you do it. If you went back and sort of tribes and stuff, that this is how they still work. They've got to teach their child how to survive in their environment. So they teach them very young how to be around a fire and cook. And I've seen some of these videos where there's like young kids and they look about 6 and they're like using machetes and making a meal, and you're like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
But it's because they've had lessons in life, haven't they? This is how you survive. Because if anything happens to the adults, at least the kids have got a chance. Mm-hmm. So it's re-educating ourselves, really, and saying, rather than dictate, rather than order people to do it your way, have the understanding of how does your child see it, how do they learn. It's obvious, isn't it? But all this stuff, it's common sense, and our thoughts take us quite far removed from common sense a lot of the time because of this opinion, because of these rules. So when you learn how to not trust yourself anymore, because the education system, because the world's, who listens to a child? Yeah. Go to school. These are your clothes you're putting on. Where's the choice? And I feel like a lot of people who get diagnosed with ADHD, especially high functioning ADHD, they just rebel against rules because they know they don't fit in, so they don't try.
Do you think as well, just kind of circling back to something you said there that I thought was really interesting. When you've got people in their 30s that still live at home and are not self-sufficient, do you think in a weird way there's kind of this inverse thing that goes on where they trick themselves into thinking they're okay and life is all good, but then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum who've always had to do things for themselves and have always been made to feel as if they're not quite good enough in some way, or like they need to keep doing more, where they almost trick themselves in their own way as well. So you've got like the people who live at home with their mum and dad who trick themselves into thinking I'm brilliant, I'm mummy's special little angel or whatever. But then you've got these other people who've been abandoned and they trick themselves into never thinking they're good enough. Are they some examples
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
at the time of
Yeah,
what you?
it's that learning, is it? And it's learning how to adapt. But the main thing is learning how to survive. So when someone has had to do everything themselves, they haven't got anyone to give them answers. So they've got to find their own answers in the world, and it's harder doing it that way. But it's actually an apprenticeship into how to be an adult, isn't it?
Yeah,
Learning how to cook for yourself, clean for yourself, fend for yourself. So if you can do all that, you're self-sufficient.
yeah,
Now, we've created a society where people aren't really, and it's not having a go at anyone. It's not being judgmental in it. It's as I've just said before. Why would you question it if something was really good and it was just the way it was? But what I try and get at is that there's got to be an end to that. Your parents can't do that for you forever.
yeah.
So you hear it more and more of sort, and it's so hard as well for young people to sort of get on the property ladder to even get insured and buy cars and all these other things. So they're relying on the parents a lot more. So that means that the people who haven't got parents are struggling a lot more. But we don't think of that, and we don't empathise enough with people, and we don't try and see through other people's perspective in life of going, and who's got the same opportunities in life. So if you get like 5 friends in a group, they've all got a different life. They've all got a different past experience of what the world offers them. So then as they get into the adult life, they will start getting different doors opening to them. The real world is about, it's not what you know, it's who you know, isn't it?
Well,
That's
yeah,
how the world works. So if you've got the right connections in life, you can sort of go far. But if you've got no connections, if you've got no family, who's helping you? Like, look how many homeless people we're seeing on the streets, and no one cares about them.
yeah.
Well, some people do. Some people are trying to help them, but then people really need more investment because who's 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 telling them they're good enough? Society's walking past them. Society's ignoring them, saying you don't matter. So they've had a life normally, and you can't speak for any of them, but individually, that you're not in a good position in life if you've ended up homeless. Now, some of them could be drug addiction, some of them could be running away. We just don't know, but people don't care because in a real environment, how many people can we have empathy for? Genuine empathy where we're going to actually help someone.
I guess, I mean, I would say it depends on the individual, but probably not. I mean, as a rule of thumb for the general population, not that many.
But it'd be about 100, 150, really. There's a lot of studies done on this, especially in America. And it's like, when you think about it, if you were from a little village, you'd know everyone, wouldn't you? And when people have a baby, it'd probably be celebrated as the village. So you'd always know everyone. So if anything happened to anybody who you actually know, that's where your empathy really kicks in, isn't it? That's why we can feel guilt. If something bad happens to someone who we haven't spoke to for a while, you can almost feel guilt. But we know something bad's going to happen to everyone around us. But why aren't we still in touch with people? Why aren't we making more effort? Because we're living in a world with millions of people, and you work in a workplace. So what have you got to have empathy for all your staff mates? You've got to have empathy for your family. You've got to have empathy for your friends. You've got to have empathy for strangers. So we've all of a sudden, and it is so. I feel like it is all of a sudden. The more technology grows, the more we lack empathy, the more sort of a narcissistic personalities being sort of bred into people where don't care who that person is. If someone sees a car crash, if someone sees something bad, the first thing people seem to do now is get the phone out.
And do you think this is a really big question for you here, but I'm so interested to know what you think about this. Is there any way back from that now? Or do you think we're too far down the line? And do you think that people either have the willingness to want to change, or there's any feasible possibility that people might change? Or do you think that's just kind of a condition of the world the way it is in 2025?
No, well, nothing stays the same. This is a fact of life. This is a delusion we tell ourselves, that things stay the same. Nothing ever stays the same. It's just slightly tweaked, things move around and things like that. So in the society we live in now, it's weird because there's a crossover, I feel, where there's loads and loads of people now who are questioning mental health and understanding it more, where it was dismissed for a lot of years. Now it was dismissed for a reason. After World War II, when people come back, all the men who had PTSD, who were sort of living out these nightmares and terrors, were getting sections. They were getting put in mental hospitals. So you weren't allowed to speak about your feelings. You weren't allowed to. And this is why we had these generations of men who didn't speak about any emotions. Most people of a certain generation, like, you've never seen them cry. You've never heard them say, I love you, really. Do you know what I mean? That not everyone, we're not speaking, it's just generalizing, but it's like, this is where it went wrong, because them men, their fathers were sort of told to shut up, to not speak about the problems. So then their sons were like, well, I want to be like my dad. And then the generations after that have gone, well, I felt like my dad didn't love me, or I didn't feel this connection. So then they've overcompensated for it with their children. And this is now why you've got children still at home getting pampered, because they're giving their kids all the things they didn't have. So they're just being the best parent they can be. This is why I'm saying we're not judging anyone. It's just about being aware of what we're doing. So awareness is a key factor, isn't it? And then having awareness over our values and beliefs, because every person you'll ever meet will have strong values and beliefs. But if they ever question them, so if someone's religious, they might live under the rules of religion. But if they're speaking to someone who's not religious, they might end up arguing. And one's fighting the corner for other. And it's the same with football. It's the same with everything.
I've got a good
It's just
example.
an opinion.
I've got a great example that ties in with what you just said. And it was a story that I got told today. So it's like you were listening in. I don't know if you've got clandestine recording devices installed in my house.
Yeah.
I was talking.
This is how it works. I've got so much info on me.
Exactly, yeah. But we were talking about this, and he said that when he was 16 years old, he was in church, and something had irked him. And he wasn't even there for like a Sunday service. It was, I think it was a wedding reception. And he just went, oh God. And the vicar came over and corrected him and went, don't you mean, oh my goodness? So it's that kind of mindset, those thoughts, and maybe imposing rules on him, which we talked about in the last podcast. But I just thought that kind of tied in with what you said, where you don't even kind of think consciously about what you might say that someone else might perceive as being offensive. This actually ties in with the wider argument around, woke culture, I guess you could say, or cancel culture, or what is or isn't socially acceptable. Do people have a right to be offended? Who makes these rules? Which thoughts are the right ones? And obviously, it's all subjective, right? But I just think it ties in with what you said there, and it's something we could probably spend hours talking about.
Yeah, it's a perfect example though, and it's there's so many people out there who you'll say to them, like, about priests, about nuns, about anything to do with the church, the Pope, but are they religious? Are people religious?
He wasn't.
See the respect level, because straight away, a lot of people who don't believe in religions will still respect someone of faith, won't they? But see, what are we doing there then? Yeah. Isn't that cross, like, communication of a thought process? So if we don't believe in something, why would we think this person's special? Why is this person special then? Why do we treat this person differently?
Exactly, yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So it's like, we've got all these rules, but we think in general we've all got these same rules. I thought for years and years that everyone thought the way I did. Mm. I really did. I used to think, surely they think that, surely they think, and they don't. So you start losing a bit of faith in humanity a lot of the time, because you think, surely someone's got common sense.
It's like me, surely someone's got all the right answers. I'm right about everything. So how can people not agree with me? Yeah. That was a big feature of my mindset pre-therapy, especially.
But see, look how having the wrong sort of thoughts running through sends out the wrong signals. So if you're in a room and you've been winding yourself up all morning over something and no one else knows about this, but you go into a room and someone in that room mentions the thing you've been thinking about all morning. Now, you might be triggered. You might then get a feeling of paranoia. You might get a feeling of, hang on, are they talking about me? So see how you're attached because you've been speaking about it. It seems very relevant. And then all of a sudden, it must be about me. So how many people are triggered by someone because they haven't smiled at them Monday or they're being funny with me? So straight away, it's the judgment. It's not the empathy of going, wonder what's the matter with them? Because they're not normally like that.
That's a
So we're
great
not allowed to have a day off, are we?
that's a great point because we don't normally think like that, do we? We don't often see, I'm going back to doing a little plug for episode one here, but we don't often see the kind of inner child in the adult. All we see is what we take at face value. It's
Mm.
like, oh, I won't say the word because, I might offend some female viewers, but, let's just go with a slightly more PG word. Oh, they're a prick. What a
Yeah.
prick they are. How can they look at me like that or look at them ignoring my messages like that or whatever? And, for all we know, a family member could have passed away, or they could just be having a really stressful day, or could have a million things going on. You're right, and we're not really preconditioned to think that way. And I kind of wonder whether that's a result of the social media and internet age. Maybe that's a big sweeping claim there, but it's kind of like, are we programmed to think that things are black or white now? Like, it doesn't seem to me like there's a lot of grey. When we think about our own thoughts and other people's thoughts, and it all comes back to how we think internally. So when we think internally about ourselves, we might think, I'm out of shape. There's no grey. There's no like, oh, well, you're in a decent shape. It's all like, no, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, or I'm too smart. Sorry, I hope no one says I'm too smart, but they probably are.
People definitely do say they're too
Yeah,
smart.
yeah, yeah. But I'm sorry, I'm not smart enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not healthy enough. I'm not qualified enough. But then, if we think about ourselves in that way, then I guess we think about other people in that way, and we think about everything as being black or white, don't we? And I
But
guess
see, it's black and white based on your values and beliefs. It's black and white based on your own rules. So this is why we're so misguided, you see, and everyone's doing it in their own little way. It's not just, oh, these people are doing it. It's when people describe mental health and they go, oh, that person's got depression or that person. Everyone's got depression. Everyone's got anxiety. It's just at what scale. So depression is sort of fear of this past. So this past is a reminder. So if you've had a bad experience last week and you're thinking about it, that's basically a mini version of depression. Now, if you feel that every day, that depression will start becoming your day-to-day routine. So most people with depression, they will list all the things that they used to like doing.
yeah,
So then after the end of the list, I say to them, so you're wondering why you're not happy? You've just stopped doing everything I just won't enjoy it anymore. But you're telling yourself you won't enjoy it, but are you trying it?
yeah,
But if there's other people there, it's amazing how a lot of people who suffer with depression internally can put a smile on for others. And this is what we don't see, do we? So you could be in a workplace, you could be in a party, and you're speaking to someone and they don't want you to feel bad. So they're putting on an act, they're going, oh yeah, I'm doing great, yeah. And deep inside, so then they go home and they go, no one knows me. But see, they haven't shared it because they don't want to feel more vulnerable. They don't want to burden anybody else. So this is what people's thought processes are. And this is every place you ever go, you've got other people who are right in the moment, they're enjoying themselves. And you might be looking at them going, how are they enjoying themselves? I'm having a terrible day.
well, you know
Why are
what?
they so happy? But see, that's a projection of your own thoughts onto somebody else. We can't do that.
No, exactly. You know what? There's two things there that I've thought of straight away with what you've just said. I think the first thing is, when I felt depressed and I felt especially down, I've always felt more of a responsibility to lift other people up because I never want them to feel how I feel. But what do I then get wrong is I'm not as kind to me. So I'm kind to them and I'm trying to project all this positive energy onto them, but I'm not doing the same for me. So that's where I've like, and look, it's not always easy for everyone to do this. I never want to make out like I'm not a qualified psychotherapist or anything like that. And it's not as easy as just going, just feel better. But I guess sometimes it's just a case of having the arm round the shoulder, so to speak, your own arm round your own shoulder, and saying, "Listen, you're doing great. You're doing what you can do in life. Like, stop judging you. Stop being so hard on yourself." Um, and I think that really ties into that. And this is the second part of what I was going to say is the Norwich City advert now. Have you ever seen that where the two men go to watch Norwich City together?
Yeah, I think so.
It's
Yeah, I
such
think
a
I've seen
powerful
that.
advert. Like anyone watching this, if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. Like I was welling up watching it, and it's so powerful. So it's these two guys who go and watch Norwich. They get the same seats every time behind the goal, and it's a man and his mate. I think they're both about 50 odd, and
Isn't
basically,
one a little bit older than the other one?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
one's a little
feel
bit
like
older.
one of them's like a little bit older. Like because I thought it was his dad or something at first. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
I
I think
don't.
it could be his brother or a relative or something, but
Yeah,
it's two men who are middle-aged and they go and watch Norwich together. And I'm trying to remember which way around it is. I think it's the one on the left looks all melancholy. So when the goals go in, he's just a bit like, yeah, so what kind of thing. He'll like go like that and celebrate, but he'll have like quite a neutral facial expression. Whereas the guy on the right is like, yay, like that, really, boisterous and happy and everything like that. Um, and then there's a few other clips again of them sort of sitting down, taking their seats. The guy on the left looks really fed up. The guy on the right looks really happy. Again, the whole sequence plays again where a goal goes in, and then he puts his arm around the guy at full time and goes, "Mate, this has been one of the best days of my life. Like what a day we've had." And then the screen goes dark, and it says, suicide is the biggest killer of men over 50. I think that's the stat, something like that. Is it men under 50 or men over 50? But it's got a stat about suicide anyway. And so then you start to see a shadow walk towards the steps to take their seat, and you instantly think it's going to be the guy who was really happy and everything and jovial. The other guy must have committed suicide. I don't know if you could say committed suicide nowadays, but you know what I mean. He killed himself basically, and it's the guy who looked miserable from the outside. And isn't that so powerful? And there's other adverts like this out there where there's one in America actually that I can remember where and I'll try and dig out the link. Maybe I can put it in the comments on this video or whatever. But basically, he's driving to work and he looks dead tired, depressed. To look at him, you just go, he's depressed, right? And then he goes into work, and again, the graphic comes up saying, suicide is the biggest killer, yada yada. And then it's him at the office, and someone comes in like crying, and she goes, "Did you not hear Greg killed himself the other day?" And Greg is like, so he appears in the ad earlier on, but he's like really happy and he's laughing.
yeah, yeah.
And then it comes up with suicide, and you think, oh God, it's that guy who looked miserable all day. And it
But see,
was.
we can't tell, and it's like this is the whole point about like being kinder to each other and understanding. It's like you've got to understand other people are suffering with mental health all the time. Mental health isn't just certain people. If you're alive, you've got mental health going on, whether it's healthy mental health or bad mental health. You can't be alive, you can't be functioning if you haven't got some sort of thought process going on. You haven't got some sort of values and beliefs. So everyone gets happy, everyone gets sad, but none of these feelings, think about it, how long do they last? Can we be happy forever? No, we can't, because we'd forget what happiness was. Then we just see it as being normal. So we'd lose interest and it wouldn't be happy for us anymore. So we all have these ups and downs, but if you don't control your thoughts, that means you don't control your mind. So if you're having more thoughts each day and more negative feelings each day, you're getting less happy periods of your time. So the way I see it is like you're looking out at sea and say a boat's going past, and that boat's anxiety. But if you sit with it long enough, it'll pass. But if you jump on board that boat, you're living on the boat of anxiety then. So you haven't let it pass. So you feel like you're living it every day. So you wake up of a morning and you're looking for it. Most people suffer really bad of a morning and then of a night. Now, this is the only time they get into themselves. That's the common thing, males and females who do it. That's the only time they've got to themselves. So if you wake up in the morning and you're going, shit, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to get up. And you start, oh my God, I've got to do this now. I've got to do that. I don't want to get out of bed. People can struggle even getting out of bed. So I worked out years ago, it's about getting up instantly. And people go, I can't do that. Who's stopping you?
Yeah.
Who you ask? But they ask for permission. Come on, get out of bed now. So see, it's back to that parental voice who's speaking to you. Come on, you've got to get up for school now. But they
Yeah.
might be 40, they might be
I
50,
was going to
might
say,
even
who's
live
doing
on
that
their
at
own.
40? Yeah, if you live on your own at 40, who's doing that
Yeah.
exactly?
So when you're sort of in that mindset, then, well, I'm not really going to do anything unless someone else matters. And that comes back to your example before of sort of it's putting a smile on someone else's face because you've become that man or woman that you needed. So that's how I've sort of lived my life a lot, where I've always become the man that I needed. And then it took me a lot of years to go, oh yeah, it was me who needed him. So it's not the rest of the world who needs us, it's us. Once we become who we are, we then help the rest of the world. And we do it with a lot more ease then, because we're doing it for the right reasons. If you're doing something to help others, to be liked, what does that mean? But if you're doing it for the right intentions and being a human and just helping someone out because you would have liked it if someone helped you out, that's good. You don't have to question that. But a lot of people nowadays, it's like they only want to help people if they're going to gain something from it. Now, there's nothing wrong with gaining anything, because if you're helping someone and like loyalty, so think about a friendship, if you're helping each other out, then it's almost like an equal relationship. So that's healthy, isn't it? But if one person's taking the piss and they're just wanting to take all the time and they're never there for the other person, that's not a healthy relationship.
No.
So if you've got friends who, when they phone you up, you're like, yeah, I'll be there, I'll help you. But you phone them and there's no answer. Or you ask them for help and they let you down. So is that an equal friendship? So that goes back into our values and beliefs again, because why would you accept that? But see, if you're feeling insecure and you go, well, I'm not going to meet any more friends, so I'll just stick with what I know. So she's sticking with what I know, rather than trusting ourselves that there's other things out there, there's other people out there. So things pass, but we've got to have a self-worth which is raised. And the only way to really, truly change your self-worth, what I believe, is controlling thoughts more. You don't really hear many people talking about controlling thoughts. It's all these external gimmicks all the time. What I do, I try and simplify everything. And it's not because people aren't intelligent. People are too intelligent. Because most people who are intelligent, they'll overcomplicate the feeling.
Yeah.
So they come to me and they'll be like talking and they'll be in this big drama circle. So quite often I'll stop and say, well, where's the solution in this drama circle? And there is none. But if they look into a deeper feeling of what they're going through thoughts, they have a true understanding why they get to that process. So if you're looking to make yourself feel like shit, that you're not doing good enough, you will tell yourself loads of these fake stories. It's like fake news. It's propaganda. And you believe in it. You're like, shit, oh my God, I'm terrible at stuff. And that's one of the best parts of my job, when I start seeing clients change and start to believe people's compliments or taking good feedback, and they're doing good things, but they're also feeling good energy then. Whereas in the past, they were doing good things and never feeling appreciated. They were never accepting what they heard externally because it didn't fit into the criteria of what they were looking for, was they are at fault. So if you're always at fault, how can you compliment someone who always thinks they're at fault?
Well, it's very difficult, and actually, with what you said there, I saw some parallels with things like drug addiction, alcoholism, gambling, even pornography addiction, where it's basically you're kind of going into it knowing that it's going to be negative for you, but it's a self-fulfilling belief or a self-fulfilling action. And that's what happens when you talk negatively to yourself. You know how damaging that is, but in a weird way, people take solace in telling themselves that the world is against them. You know, they find solace in it, and they almost find a weird level of comfort in it. I know that because in the past I felt like that. And it was kind of like, oh, I told you so. But then, okay, so you drink, you get obliterated, and then you're hungover. Well, I told you. Or you lose loads of money on gambling. I told you. Or you know that it's going to be negative. You know that what you're consuming probably isn't going to be good for you in the long run. But it's kind of like you think you don't deserve better than that.
It's also the fact, though, there, it's like, it's the examples of it. And sorry for using you as the guinea pig here tonight, but you keep giving me the examples of our
Yeah, no,
thought process.
yeah.
So that thought process that you've just gone through, what you were basically saying was that you had values and beliefs during your childhood, during your young adult life, and drink, drugs, pornography, gambling, all these other things have all got a judgment by you, but they've also got a judgment by your parents, by your social surroundings. So if you want to sort of self-sabotage, you can then go into one of these things which you know are already prejudged. So you're judging the act that you're going to do. A lot of people drink and then think they've got to judge themselves on it. So it's like you're the child, the inner child, which is like, let's have fun, let's all, not the real child drinking. you're the inner child. So you could be of all ages, a 40-year-old drinking like going, I'm having fun. But then they have a couple more, and then they have a couple more. So they might have had 10 drinks. So then they wake up the next day, they're feeling a bit rough. They've had a brilliant night. They wake up, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Oh, I drank too much. What did I say? Oh my God. And then the anxiety builds up. Oh, I feel sick. So see how dramatizing it becomes because they're saying they've poisoned themselves. It's the same as people who go to McDonald's or have fast foods and then they go, I shouldn't have had that. If you've already done it, don't start judging yourself afterwards because where's the solution in that? So see that what I was saying about the drama circles.
Yeah. No,
Then
exactly.
you attach that a night where you've enjoyed yourself, maybe with your friends, socializing, you've ruined it by having the memory of I've poisoned myself, I've done this, I've done that. So the intake we have, we poison it more with our words. If you have something, some food, and maybe one of your friends go, hey, like say, I don't know, chicken or something, go, that chicken tastes a bit funny, or my stomach's starting to hurt. Straight away, power of suggestion. People are then looking for pains in the stomach. They're like, hang on, I've just had that. Am I feeling sick? And they're looking at the mate, oh God, I'm going to be sick now. So you can bring that on. So see how powerful thoughts are. How many people can make themselves vomit? I've seen people who smell like a fart and start barking and go, "Wah!" And you're like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Is this person this dramatic? Have they never been in a public toilet? Have they never been to a match? Like, there's so many bad smells. You're going to struggle in life if you're going to balk or you're going to gag every time you smell something you don't like.
Yeah.
But we all do these counteractions, and if we sort of satisfy our own sort of belief system and go, well, that's how I react. When do we question our reactions? If we stop overreacting, if we stop dramatizing things, things aren't as exciting. That's the bottom line, isn't it? So if you're having a boring day and you go, do you know what? I'm going to stress myself out all day today. That'll keep me busy.
It's like you've read my mind in
Yeah,
previous years.
what a brilliant idea. I'm going to walk into each room and go, what have I come in here for? Oh my God, I'm stupid. And then so see how quick. So I can do this now. I can speak about it without, like, my mind knows not to send these emotions. It's just like, oh yeah, he's just talking again. Because it knows I'm not living them. But when people are telling me stories, every client I've ever seen does it. They'll tell me a story, and within a few seconds, it's like they're watching a horse race. They're out the chair, like, and I said this, and then you're like, fucking hell, you're not reliving it. That's basically what PTSD is.
Yeah.
You're reliving these events. So if it's someone's pulled out on you in the car and you're telling me the story about it, I've seen people get enraged where they're like that, and I'm like, but this person's got off. You don't know who they are. You probably don't know what car they're in, but you've drove away from that with all this rage. So who's actually being punished? So someone's pulled out on you,
Yeah.
and now you're beating yourself up about it. You're giving yourself more shit than you would have done if you'd have spoke to the person.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great
So
example.
who's getting punished every time you're punished in your real life? Who punishes you more?
Oh yeah, me. Well, the thing is, this is what I think I've said this to you before. It's like with Liverpool this season, it looks like they're going to win the Premier League. So 5 years ago, obviously I got annihilated because it was the first time in 30 years, and like I did wake up the next day a bit and think like you're sort of judging myself. Whereas now I'd just be like, do you know what? I'm just going to have a great time. I don't care how much I drink or don't drink. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. What matters is that you're present, you're in the moment, you're enjoying yourself. Like you used a great example there, McDonald's. People working from home. Sometimes you just don't get time. Like I have sometimes have a lot of work on, and I'll get a takeaway. So what? But in years,
But see, another example, you've just justified why you have a takeaway sometimes. So
well,
why
yeah,
do you feel you have to do that?
well, yeah, exactly. But
Because
this is
you've
what
worked hard
this is what
today.
people do,
No,
isn't
but see
it?
how your thoughts do that. Your thoughts go, because you've worked hard today, you can have a takeaway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People say that stuff all the time, don't they? They're always
Yeah.
like, trying to justify it to others, and that's like quite a common problem.
So do we want acceptance of others? Is that why we're justifying it? Do we want people to, or is it the fact, do you think, this is what I believe, is that we don't feel heard enough. We don't feel people understand us enough. So whenever I'm working with someone who doesn't feel like they've been heard, which is most people, to be honest, because no one ever really does feel heard, they feel misunderstood. When you feel misunderstood, you will find yourself over explaining to people. Plus, we have a lot of characters out there who sort of they want you to over explain, they want to waste your time.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
like when you were in school and the teacher would be like, and you'd be just trying to like keep it going or something, and you're like, can I ask this question now? Do you know what I mean? If the teacher ever said like this, probably more my mentality, but the teacher like, "Going to finish it class early today," I'd be like, "Can we ask another question?" Just to cause a bit of chaos. Because for me, I had to get dopamine hits of being sort of a rebel.
Yeah,
Because for me, I didn't want to take part in them subjects, but the subject I liked, I was really paying attention to because I was interested. And I found that that's what I learned from school. Really, is that I don't attach to things that I'm not interested in, and that it'll move on. We have different fads in life, we have different phases through it, but the things you're really passionate about are the things we should try and keep hold of, aren't they?
yeah,
So when you're constantly looking, so many people judge themselves. They go, "Oh, I've tried loads of things, but I don't stick to nothing." Well, isn't that life?
yeah.
You're not going to stick to something you don't like. So I always relate back to food, and especially during this time, because I'm a bit hungry. But it's like if you had the same meal, so think of your favorite meal. You can have any meal you want. It's your favorite meal. You can have it right now. It can be cooked by a chef. But then you've got to have that meal every day now for the rest of your life. How special is it after 3 days of having it? How special is it after five? How special is it after 15 days of having it? Are you sick of it yet?
Oh, yeah. Well,
But it
yeah,
was your favorite food. So as we progress through life, we should change a lot. We should have different interests. We should be able to attach and detach to things because they're not really us. So when I was younger, I was really attached to like doing martial art and then doing weight training, all things like that. But then once I become a father and stuff, that interest sort of lost its track because my life had changed. And you've got to keep changing with your life a lot of the time because that's the reality. We can keep doing things, but a lot of people who train and go to the gym, it's down to insecurities. They feel like if they don't go, they won't accept themselves. Or I had McDonald's the other day, so I've got to go to the gym.
was
Now,
it, yeah,
you see change though, and that's what I always say. And when I used to train in the gym all the time, like I wanted to see change, so I'd be training to see change. If I
yeah,
was training and not seeing change, I'd have stopped doing it. But because I could actively see change and I could control, you learn a lot about yourself. So you learn about your sort of muscle. So you're interacting with yourself more. But because I had body dysmorphia, I was never happy with myself. So it took me a lot of years to become happy with myself. And it was when I stopped doing all these things about my body. It was when I actually worked on the inside bit of accepting me for who I am. And now I'm happy with my body without doing all the strenuous stuff. I'm still very active, but I don't need to do all that stuff because I accept me for being me now. And if I'm not happy with something, I know I can train any part of my body, any part of my thoughts. I can learn things, but I can also unlearn things. I don't keep unnecessary data anymore. But what was the unnecessary data I was learning? It was negative thoughts. So I don't keep any negative thoughts that way because it's a false memory, isn't it?
yeah.
If you ruin your own night by saying I drank too much, have you lost the memory of enjoying yourself the night before?
Oh.
Have you? If you go for a lovely meal and you've had too much, who's saying you've had too much?
Well, it's only you. It's only ever you. And and I think this is a really interesting angle because a lot of the people that watch this will probably be, the slightly younger generation who are more into exercise, go to the gym, like I do, and are probably more prone to letting thoughts like the ones you've just mentioned take hold. And I guess that's more of like an uncomfortable truth, really. Because I feel like that's been the kind of the overarching theme of this podcast, really, is facing those uncomfortable truths, which is not necessarily what you think it is. So when I say uncomfortable truth, I don't actually mean that you're out of shape or you're not good enough in this way or that way. The uncomfortable truth is actually that you're not kind enough to yourself. Would I be right
Yeah,
in saying that? I mean, I'm
yeah,
just representing
perfect.
a layman here, but
But so see, our happiness is from within. Everything comes from within. This is what I've been saying for a long time, and I feel like it works significantly for so many people from different backgrounds, men and women. Do you know what I mean? It works for people because there's no bullshit involved in it. It's common sense. So all I do really is I listen to someone and I listen to how they're speaking about themselves. I listen to how they're interacting with themselves. And people aren't kind to themselves a lot of the time. So I reflect that back to them and they start getting an understanding of how they're actually speaking to themselves, how their thoughts are interacting with their emotions. So that's where the doubt comes from. So if you're feeling doubts inside about who you are as a person, how you look, so how you're going to fit into this world, where's the confidence coming from to succeed? Where's the confidence coming from to be this best version of you? So don't you need support? So if one of your friends is having a hard time and said to you, do you know what, I'm out of shape. I've been eating too much. I've never really trained. Can I start coming to the gym with you? Now, can they train the same as you? If you've been going to the gym for years and you know how to train, they'll need to learn how to train, won't they? They'll need to have that understanding. They'll need someone to have that empathy for them and sort of help them on the way. Because where's the motivation coming from? They're asking you for help, but you can relate to it and you'd probably be able to help them more than you could help yourself because you'd have all their answers, wouldn't you? How many tips of advice would you have for them? But then you leave them and go, hang on, I need to listen to my own advice. I'm hoping everyone who's watching this has them thoughts sometimes of why am I giving this brilliant advice that I need myself?
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah,
you're learning from it, aren't you, of being nicer to your body and believing in your own strength and things like that. And it's like, it's that belief that you can lift more weights, you can train better. But if you're battling it, it's not working in your favor. Once again, it's the same as when we take drugs, when we drink, when we eat too much food. If our judgment is, I have poisoned myself. So if you've been in the gym and you say, it's not even doing anything, so it's not helping this, I'm not getting in better shape. Do you think your body's working in your favor? Or do you think your mind's listening to you going, don't change the body? So it works against you. It's amazing how many people who come and see me and without even trying, the body becomes in a better shape because they're not using as much energy fighting off all these negative false thoughts. People spend on average a day, and it's an estimate really, but for someone who's an overthinker, maybe 8 to 10 hours a day thinking. They're just so used to it, they don't even realize they're thinking. And people who think more than that, it's just non-stop. They've got a running commentary in the mind from the minute they wake up. So the thoughts are constantly bombarding the mind with all these emotions. So that person might not leave the house, but throughout that day, they've been on about 400 roller coasters. And they wonder why they're exhausted in the night. But then when they lie down, all these other thoughts come. So when you're asleep, your mind does not sleep. This is why we have dreams. So your thoughts, I don't know how much your thoughts have to do with your dreams because my dreams, especially nowadays, they come from my mind. So the story of the dream isn't what it's about. It's about what emotions we're feeling in a dream. I truly believe this because this is how I work and it makes sense. It makes sense for a lot of people who I work with. Whereas if you attach to the story, it can mean anything. You might be in your local pub and there's a sheep in there and you're drinking out of a boot or something like that and you're trying to make sense of that. But the reality of it might be the feeling in the dream was that you were feeling anxious or you felt like something bad was going to happen. So that's something that you'll probably ignore over daytime, isn't it? So we can learn a lot from our dreams. But when your thoughts are running non-stop, which ones are you meant to trust?
yeah, and I think the big problem sometimes is that, you know, you can have a lot of thoughts in a day and you're not always even consciously aware of them, but the ones that you tend to remember or pick up on the most tend to be the negative ones. And where does that come from? Well, obviously it comes from you, but it also comes from the people you surround yourself with. If we go back to the gym example, you can see a guy in there who's absolutely huge and he just wants to big everybody else up. He's all about that. You know, he says, if you're in the gym, you're trying to improve yourself, and I respect that. And that's exactly my mindset. But then you'll get someone else in there, and I've had this before, where they make fun of your physique or they say, you know, you're this or you're that. And I think a lot of that comes from who you surround yourself with. And that was actually a question that just kind of came to me that I wanted to ask you, which is how important are the groups of people you surround yourself with in influencing your thoughts, actions, behaviors, and your mind?
Well, that's a good question to ask, and it also fits into what you were saying before about these uncomfortable truths. So if you're in a group And it normally starts, doesn't it, in childhood? That's your first little group that you'll be in, your little friends group in like junior school, infants, whatever. And then in senior school, it changes, doesn't it? So I felt in junior school, I was sort of friends with most of the people because I'd known them all for years, do you know what I mean? And I knew everyone's names, but the school wasn't as big as then the senior school. So in a senior school, you go into it, and I think there was about 240 kids in our year. So they split it into two halves. So all kids who went to junior schools might have been in the other half of the year. So you were in no classes with them. So although you were in the same year, it was like there was 2 years for one.
Mm.
So you lose interaction then, don't you, with that other group? You probably lose a lot of empathy because the numbers, if we're only used to being around 100 to 150 people and there's 240 kids in a school year, you haven't even got enough empathy for everyone in your year. So if you hear about this kid who's broke his leg, but you don't know him because he's in some other class, not arsed, are you? But if it's your mate, you're like, okay, now what happened to you?
Yeah.
But someone tells you the story. This is why, like, when often you're speaking to, like, I'll give the example of like elderly people or parents or something where this is in general. I know Peter Kay used in one of his sketches, but these people who are in your family, they might go, "Oh, you know Jeff down the street," and you're like, "No," and they might carry on telling, "Oh, Jeff, you know Jeff," and they might keep repeating the name, and they're trying to get you because their little world is their road. So they're telling you about people who they know, but you don't know them. But they can't tell you anything else because they haven't done anything else. So their world is very small, isn't it? Where you could tell them about work, but are they interested about your workmates? Because they don't know them. They only get a brief of what you describe. So if you're with your friends and you're working in this place and there's an arsehole who works in there, you're viewing them as an arsehole, this is your judgment. So you go to your mates, "Oh, there's this fella in work, he's a real arsehole." So you start telling them about him. Now, do your mates all now think this fella's an arsehole?
Because they're just
Never
words,
met
they're
him.
just abstract words, aren't they? They don't really
But,
have
but
any.
see, but see, some of your friends will. Some of your friends will take your side, even though they've never met this person, and go, "Yeah, Jeff, who he works with, he's a right arsehole, him." And they might go home and tell their partners, or they might go and tell them and go, "Oh, yeah, this fella." So this is what I was saying the other week about witch hunts and stuff like that. We should question things more where if we don't know someone, we haven't really got, we've convinced ourselves that we've got the right to have an opinion on someone. An opinion on someone is really just a reflection on who you are.
Yeah.
And if people realise that more, they realise that they're exposing themselves a lot of the time of their own judgments. So if someone judges me on something, but it's their opinion, I'll often, especially in my social life, I'll often highlight the fact that this is just their opinion.
Well, that's what you said at the start, wasn't it? Truth versus
Mhm.
opinion. I think that's a
Yeah.
really interesting discussion
So
point.
being true, I'd
Yeah.
do this with my friends and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. It's like I'd be open with them because I want them to understand.
Mm.
So if you're doing something and one of your friends wouldn't do that, they'll often speak negatively about it or go, "Oh, I don't know you're doing that."
Mhm.
If you've got a friend who works down the sewers, do you want that job? Where you've got to get down a hole into all human shit and all this other. Do you want that job?
It wouldn't be top of my list, let's put it that way.
No. So if he was telling you about it, would you even want to hear about his job?
Well, I am quite an inquisitive person, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure
But
if I.
then, so say you want to tell him about your job, though, but you don't want to talk about his job, but you want him to listen to your job. And this is the problem with society. We always want to share our thing, but are we listening to others?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, like, and I'm no problem saying this. I've been in social situations with a lot of people, even people who I used to be close friends with, where all they would do was complain about their own lives and what was going on in their head, in their world. And they never asked a single question about anybody else. And that's one of my pet peeves, even to this
Yeah.
day. Like it's
But
still.
see, rather than it being a pet peeve and affecting you, why not just be more aware and listen to other people? And then you go, "Well, this person's not really interested in me." So rather than judge them or go, just let them get on with their lives. So this is what we should be in life because we can't be liked by everyone. We can't, that's not what we're here for. It's about creating nice environments that we're in. But because life's so artificial now and we're put in so many situations where it's just not right. We're just doing it all wrong. For humanity, we work in the wrong way. And when I'm saying this, it's like how many times are people sort of not spending the time with the children so they can earn money? So straight away, how's that child interpretation of the world that money's more important than me?
Mm.
And I've seen loads of clients over the years where that's how they've felt, and it massively affects them right the way through their lives. So we're damaging people by not showing, well, what does love mean? To that theory on love. But see, all these uncomfortable truths and friendships, they're all revolved around this. Because if you love your friends, in what way? So what does that word mean? So not love for a partner, love for a friend. What does that mean to you? So you individual, usually it's guinea pig as well, sorry, but it's like, what does love mean to you when it comes to friendship? What do you offer that? So if someone's your friend, what does that come with for you? What's your deal? What do you give someone who you say you love?
But yeah, unequivocal loyalty and support, and unconditional loyalty, and also going back to
It's
what you
not
said.
unconditional though, is it? So
Well,
see,
not for
straight
me.
away your thoughts change. So
Yeah,
it's not unconditional.
yeah. No,
But it
no.
comes with
Yeah,
conditions, doesn't it?
that's
You can't do anything to you, can you, Andy? Or
no,
you can't act in any way. So you can pick and choose. This is not set for life, but what you want, what I'm trying to get at is that rather than think what you need to give to your friends for love, what do you need to feel back to feel someone's your real friend and that they love you, they care about you? What do you need to feel of them? What's your demands in setting boundaries, in having a friend? What do you need to feel of them?
I feel like it's an overused word, but just honesty. But honesty that when I'm doing things that are good for me, and honesty
But are
when I'm
you being honest with them all the time? So it goes both ways. So are you being honest with them all the time? So one of your mates turns up and you love him, he's one of your good mates, but he's got a new jacket on and you think it looks terrible. Are you telling him?
it's not my place to tell them though. Like it's I
See,
don't
because
like.
that's just your opinion then, isn't it? So that's the right
Yeah,
answer, because that would just be your opinion on it. But
yeah,
lads often do this taking the piss.
yeah,
So it depends, doesn't it?
yeah.
So I read it, I think it's off Lab Bible or something. I've seen it just before, like an hour before that we started this. And it said, friends who sort of give each other shit tend to be more loyal
Yeah,
because it's that
I
opening
can
the
see
door,
that.
is it? And
Yeah,
I think especially in men, I think men are a lot more childish. You get men of any age and you get them together. Like there's a few videos online of male friends who haven't seen each other for years, and it's like 3 years and 4 years, not like years and years. And they're like hugging each other, they're like in an airport and their wives or whatever have arranged it. But you just think, I think men are very good at showing affection. And I think it's because, especially around my age group and below, we're from a different generation where men were maybe starting to realise that affection is important, and men have got. I think men are like really, really empathetic. I feel like I've seen more empathy in my real life from men than I have from women. I feel like women are a lot stronger. Women seem to be like, "Come on, get on with it." Whereas I think a lot of men are like, "I can't." So we like that's where women's strength really comes out, because women are really, really resilient. They've got to be. Their bodies are so unique. They can create these babies in the wombs and know it's amazing. This is why I'm always like trying to get my female clients to embrace being a woman and what they can do. Don't compare to being a man. Just be happy with who you are.
mhm.
If men just are happy with who they are, but if we're competing with a lion, if you look at a lion, uh, can we compare with a lion? There's
No,
some fellas out there who probably think I can fight a lion, but they get fucking eaten, wouldn't they? But the reality of it is it's bravado for a lot of people. It's not quite a lion. You wouldn't, because it fucking kill you. Go to Chester Zoo tomorrow. It just doesn't happen. So why would we compare to different things? And it's unfair a lot of the time. Men and women are two totally different things, and it's for a reason. So it's about us accepting. And some people don't feel like and that's not down to us, because otherwise that's our opinion. So how we feel as an individual, if someone's born and they don't feel like they're in the right body, that's no one else's business. No
mm,
one else should be able to judge them. But also the fact that we can't enforce our beliefs on someone else.
yeah,
So if we're self-accepting, we can all be happier without having other people sort of giving you a certificate to say, oh, yeah, you're okay, you're normal. What is normal? I don't think I've ever met a normal person.
No, no.
And that's not in me therapy, that's in life. I don't think I've ever, because what is normal?
Mm.
What is the average BMI? What's the average height? Who gives a shit? Why do we care so much about labels? Why do we care so much about being these perfect things when no one's perfect?
You know,
Why don't we accept differences?
I've always found it really challenging to, well, not me personally, because I don't work for the Office for National Statistics, but I've always found it a very challenging concept to try and aggregate, how many people in the world? 6 billion. Like, oh yeah, so your average person looks like this. Oh yeah, have you gone round the houses and asked everybody, like what they look
But,
like, how
but
they,
how does it make sense in modern society?
yeah,
So all the different cultures, all the different backgrounds, how does it make sense? So if you went to certain areas or certain countries in the world, it's like heights would be different, wouldn't it? Skin tone would be different. So we're all adaptable to our surroundings and sort of that's the belief, isn't it, of human nature.
Mhm.
So if you're like people have always said it, but people are so heavily judgmental about Americans, aren't they? And especially British people were quite happy to say, oh yeah, they're all overweight and all that. They're not, but there's some who are. And in America, it's a lot easier to become obese and overweight because the fast food there is massive.
Mm.
You go to like when I used to live in California, it's like you go to KFC and like a chicken leg, it'd be like I'd be like, what's this off? Like the size of a turkey. One of them, I thought it was a dog's leg or something. It was massive. I was like, but you don't get in England, they're about that big.
Yeah.
So the difference, and if you get steak in America, all their cows are on steroids, so it's like their steaks are massive. If you serve someone an 8 ounce steak in America, they'd be like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
But in Britain, we're all, oh, like,
Straight away, I'm thinking of the John Candy scene from The Great Outdoors. I don't know if you've ever seen that, where he eats the huge steak at the end.
oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
like.
and John Candy, as we know, was a rather large fella, and I'm not saying that to be
But
judgmental, but
see, it's self sabotage though. He was making everyone laugh. I love John Candy, and it's like
he's brilliant. Yeah,
it's so sad because we've got so much records of this. Of like, look at these celebrities who sort of end up on the self sabotage path and end up dying really young
yeah.
because he was so young when he died. And like in films, where I'm sure is it in Home Alone? Is it in Home Alone one?
He's in the first
Yeah,
Home
yeah.
Alone.
Well, I'm sure he's only about 38 in it. You know.
Yeah, he was. So he would have been. And I know this because I looked it up the other day because I was watching. That's my favorite Christmas film, by the way, and I was looking at when they filmed it. So they filmed it in 1990, at the start of 1990, and I'm pretty sure he was born in 1950. So for argument's sake, let's say he was around 40. But if you compare him to a 40-year-old now, he looks a lot older, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah. But see, back then it was different, wasn't it? And like all the parents in films, I think it's what's it called, Father of the Bride.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm sure he's only meant to be like 44 or something in a Steve Martin, and you're like,
It's like
they all have
It's a
white
Wonderful
hair,
Life.
didn't they? They all dress very
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
conservative, and it was like I've always thought this. So when I was a teenager, I'd look at people who were like 40 and people who are like my age, and I'd think they're old bastards. Them, they don't know how to enjoy themselves. They don't know nothing. They're boring and all that. Whereas I look around now and some of my mates, I'm like, no one's grown up.
Yeah.
Like even like for my age group, it's like, what are you meant to wear? So most people my age, you end up looking a bit like a scally, or you end up looking like because we don't know what to wear,
I've
and
got
it's like,
I've got my Under Armour on, so you've
yeah.
got
So see, I've gone for traditional Nike, but it's like I don't really give a shit.
yeah.
I don't care what brands I'm wearing, and I don't overly pay. I don't actually like any big badges normally. This is probably the biggest badge you got, but I went to Nike shop when it opened in Edge Lane, and I was like bought a few t-shirts and stuff. But other than that, I don't go for labels because what? Why do that? If I got
Well, just really quickly, sorry, just to cut through there. Do you think that that's one example of how thoughts and beliefs have changed? We talk about men in the 80s who are around the same age as we are now. You go into the pub, you shake hands, firm handshake. I always talk about my grandfather who was born in 1920, shirt and tie, a
yeah,
fleece blazer on, even when. So I grew up in the East Midlands, and they came down to visit in the mid 90s. And I think it was the summer of 94 or 95. And my dad told me the story. It was like 33 degrees every day for about a week. And he would sit in the garden reading the newspaper with a shirt and tie on, and a blazer. And it was all, firm handshakes. You wouldn't hug guys, and you talk about going to the pub, you'd hug your mates. You wouldn't hug guys. But that's how, I mean, do you think, is that fair to say, like that's a way of thoughts and beliefs and your mind and how that's changed over the years and kind of like if you cross compare us with people back then, or am I looking too much into it?
Well, no, that's basically how it works, and that's what I want people to do. Really, is question. Like we've got to update. We're not program systems, and it's like you've got to sort of understand that by the time we finish education, you've finished the programming system. But where are you after that system? So when you've got your certificate, like because this isn't for everyone. Some people will go through uni and they come out of it feeling so confident, they found a new version of themselves. So it's great for them. So that's why I'm saying we're not comparing, we're not putting everyone under one umbrella, but it's the people who don't. It's the people who suffer and then believe they're suffering. So they make everything harder for themselves. So they might just struggle the whole way through uni, but they got like a brilliant result. And then they might have no self-esteem or confidence to then go and get a good job. So then they might end up doing a job where you don't actually need a degree to do it. So all the effort, all the education is being worthless, hasn't it? Really? Because they're left in a position where they could have got a job there without doing all that. So look how insecure that person's feeling, when the truth of it is they're just not believing in themselves enough. They're just not applying themselves enough because that belief doesn't, you're not going to get a good job. So they write themselves off. And it's so unfair because anyone who's gone through all the years of going to uni and getting into debt, only then to get into the real world and go, this isn't really helping me because I'm not interested in the thing I've done my degree in. See, that's the programming. Because why have they done a degree in something that they're not interested in? I physically can't. This is since childhood, and I'm so glad that I am this way. It's like my mind has always been against the programming. When I've ever been, someone tries to teach me something that isn't relevant, I didn't know it wasn't relevant, but through my life, I've figured out that it does. It switches off. It used to affect me in ways that wasn't helpful. So if I ever stopped and asked someone for directions, there's something where no matter what they said, it'd just be like, my brain would be going, boom, 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 and they'd be going, yeah, you turn left. And I'd just be like, okay, thank you. And then I'd think, I don't know where they just said.
You got lost. Yeah.
Yeah, or names. I used to be terrible for names. So because my brain was constantly working all the time to feel safe and sort of create this stable environment, it was switching off to certain things. It wasn't picking up. So that wasn't helping, but I've identified that as well. So when you start identifying what's good for me, what's bad for me, that's it. Not for anybody else. I'm never trying to dictate how I live my life because that's not what person-centered counseling is. How can I possibly have anyone else's answers? I'm trying to get my clients to believe that they've got all their answers, because if you haven't got your answers, who has? But see how we want someone else to have our answers. Life is easier. So if you're good at school, but you don't go to uni and you might get a job in a factory, and it's very similar to school. So you're going there every day and you've got your groups of mates and you do it, but you're getting told what to do. You're getting told when you can have your holidays. You're getting told all this stuff. It's pretty much still like school. So you haven't got to really think. You just do it. You're basically a robot.
Yeah.
You're a sheep. And people hate getting called sheep, but you've got to be different then. You can't follow a pack. If you're a sheep, try and think what sheep see. They see the arses of other sheep because they're following a pack. So who's at the front? And as I always say, and I don't know what I said on the first podcast, but it's like, who kills the sheep? It's the shepherd, it's not the wolf. The sheep live the whole life terrified of this wolf. I mean, this is a made-up story, so they probably don't, because they don't really see wolves. They go, what the fuck's that? But looks like a sheepdog. But in reality, that's the story, isn't it? Oh, the sheep will get you, the wolf will get you. When really, the shepherd's that much of a bastard. He doesn't just kill the sheep, he kills the kids. He kills the lambs. Doesn't he? So that all these people that, oh, look at that lovely little lamb, but bet you it tastes nice. So see, straight away, that someone who's vegetarian, like, oh, that's why you don't do it. Yeah. But in olden times, you wouldn't have survived without having meat, without having these things, you just wouldn't have survived. That's why if you ever watch any of these survival programs, they sometimes get vegans on it and vegetarians. Now, that's their belief system. I'm not judging it. It's each to their own. But what I'm saying is, if it was a survival situation, you would just have to do what you had to do. It's not about the thought process, is it?
Exactly.
Like, I've seen some of them where they have to kill animals to survive, and you see them crying and getting upset about it, and because they don't want to do it, but they need to eat.
It's a great example of that, because you think of how certain thought processes that were second nature for hundreds, thousands, millions of years are not so second nature now. And it actually makes you wonder, what thought processes do we have right now, today, that we find really normal and we don't question, could be alien to the human race in 100 years or 200 years. Very difficult to predict, but
I guarantee it will be, because we've changed so much just in the last 100 years. Technology it just blows your mind, the difference.
Yeah.
If you look back into the 1920s, when you say when you got, it's like back then, where were you comparing to? There was no Instagram going, oh, look at these, what are they wearing on the beach in Ibiza? Do you know what I mean? That's not how it works. So your granddad back then, he probably didn't have a sports attire for summer and flip-flops, you know what I mean, and walking that. So that was probably his clothes. So, well, I've seen loads of pictures. I think I've seen pictures of my granddads, like my great-granddads, where they've got the pants rolled up and they've got like a string vest on, or like a vest, and then they've got the shirt hanging up on like the deck. Remember them old deck chairs? But everything's changing. So as humans, we've got to accept change, but we've also got to accept that no matter what changes come, we are humans. So I am convinced it's in our DNA. A lot of these things that we feel are in our DNA. So being attracted to fire, being attracted to sort of nature, because we've become so far removed from nature, especially in the last 40 years. Now you've got people my age who want to buy camper vans and they want to go and climb mountains every weekend, and they want to get away from this fake reality. And don't question it, just go, because we are nature. That's what we are. We look at nature and we accept it for all its faults, but in the reality, everything's got to be perfect. Our lives are very artificial. From the minute you wake up of a morning, your thoughts control. So if you've got a nice house or you haven't got a nice house, is that your thoughts? If you've got a bed, but is it the right bed? If you've got clothes, are they the right clothes? Have you got food? So all these things are based on your values and beliefs again. So when we're not true to ourselves, everything's affected. So how can you then be truthful to your friends? How can you be truthful to your family? If you're running off insecurities, if you're running off self-doubt, and respect comes into it most of all. So say you respect your friends, you might not want to sort of for them to not respect you. So if you cross the line and say something controversial to them, they might not be your friend anymore. Mm. So if you got to sugarcoat some of your personality to friends,
well, you shouldn't really have to sugarcoat anything.
But see, we do, because we want to feel accepted. So it took me a long time to realise not to sugarcoat people anymore and not to sugarcoat friendships. And it's not like going, this friendship shit, I'm not your mate no more, because we're not sticks. What it's saying is, what does this person offer me? What do I offer them? And if it's just a socialising thing, just accept that. I know loads of lads who I only see if I go to a social event, and I'm made up to see them. But other than that, we don't really speak. Mm. But then I've got closer friends who contact me and I contact them back. So it's more equal, isn't it? Yeah. So that's what I purposely look for, is more equality, is more equal relationships. So when you're doing that, you're not pissed off as much. You're not like, if you feel let down all the time by people around you, maybe your expectations are too much in these people, because we can't change others. We can only change ourselves. My job is never for me to change anyone. It's for people to come to me who want to change. That's why I want to do these videos, because I want people to relate to, if this helps them, which I'm guessing 15% of people who are going to watch this, it might help in that right way. 85% of people might watch it and go, he's a dickhead, him, or this is bullshit, or I don't agree with this. But as I've just said, that's just their opinion. They're entitled to it. I don't really want to hear their opinion, because why do I? But if someone's got a genuine question, I can answer it for them. If someone's got, so, because that's what I want. I want someone to be inquisitive. I want someone to question their life, not mine. They don't have to question me. Oh, what if he's got Nike on? He's a tit him. Who cares? That's what I'm trying to get at. No one cares. No one cares what my hair is looking like. No one cares about my beard. No one cares about nothing other than what their belief system is. If we're attracted to other people and drawn to other people because of the things they've got, what does it say about the person?
Oh, big time, yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
what does your car say about your personality? Nothing, because anyone can go and buy your car. If you've got clothes on, anyone can go and buy them unless you're wearing unique items. But we live in a society now where we've got so many people, but where's the creativity? Where's the handmade stuff? This is more nature, you see, and this is all going to come back. So this is a little prediction for you. All these things, because look at the 80s, all these handmade things, all this, that's what's coming back. If you look at all these cake shops that are coming out now, people are making all these cakes and selling them. Isn't that what we used to do in school and get like 50p for and all stuff like that? So it's
Yeah.
the creativeness, isn't it?
You're even seeing it the way people dress.
But
So,
encouraging.
well, I'm just going to say with the but like the university students, because I live quite close to Smithdown Road, which is a big student area in Liverpool, and the students there have got moustaches and mullet haircuts
Yeah.
and like sort of like not like my generation where we had really skinny jeans like down to you, it would like be tapered into your fucking ankles, right? But these kids are wearing like baggy light colored jeans, that which is what people wore in the 80s.
Well, not
So
to be
it's
honest.
all come back around to
Late seventies, it is that I think a lot of the styles about now tend to be late seventies. The 80s, you see, was after the Vietnam War, so a lot of money was pumped into the music industry and films. That's where all the family films come out, and a lot of music. Look how many videos from the 80s where men have got makeup on. And you get fellas nowadays going, oh, these fellas nowadays wearing makeup. You go, look at the 80s.
I know,
Like
yeah,
every
there's
band
people
had
older
fucking
than them,
makeup
yeah.
on, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they had all what are they called? Them they're like the shiny tops with the what are they called? They're like the little circles, like where the
Yeah. I'm not
I can't think what they're called.
yeah.
But it's like
Something
not
flamboyant
embroidery,
anyway.
but
Something
yeah, it's like it was very sort of like camp, I think, back then, and it was sort of that opening of sort of well, like men don't have to be tough and strong, but that's because we were getting through wars and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Most series you watch that are American based, it's all 80s music from Britain. So that's why they were all big in America at the time, because like Duran Duran and all these other bands, because they loved that sort of the British culture of everyone being cool and everyone. And then as soon as the Gulf War started, we got the gangster rap coming out and all the bloodshed films. So
yeah. We had
there's a massive there's massive research behind it, because every decade has got its own psychological sort of effect on society. Every like the 80s was full of sort of poverty, but it was also family films on, and there was like happy music. But I remember the 80s as being like a happy-ish time because it just seemed more fun. I feel like the 90s, obviously I was in my teenage years, everything seemed a bit more angry.
Well, that's
And
what I was
then
about to say. Woodstock 99 is a great example. I was about to say that. Like, with thought processes and beliefs and everything, like how the mind can change in such a short space of time. Have you ever seen the Woodstock documentary on Netflix
I
about
think so,
Woodstock 99?
yeah.
So you think of Woodstock 69, the original
Yeah,
Woodstock, right?
yeah,
You got Hendrix and everything like that, peace and love, you know, sex, people are on drugs, whatever, people are a lot more chilled than they were 30 years later, because 30 years later they put it on, and what is that synonymous with? Limp Bizkit, when they played Break Stuff and
yeah,
people were lighting wood on fire and like crowd surfing on planks of wood, and it was just full of rage. Corn played there as well, and I'm not dissing these bands, by the way. I've got a lot of respect for Corn, but yeah, it was just crazy to see the cultural like shift in the space of 30 years. Not even like shift doesn't really do justice to it. The whole kind of transformation of people's mindsets and beliefs, where you've gone from a group of young people who are just enjoying life. And yeah, they're anti-establishment and everything like that, but generally they're quite easygoing, affable people. But then 30 years later, you've just got the most angry, group of kids. And I say group of kids, I mean, they would have been your sort of age. The people going there would have been 19, 20 around that time. And they
But
were just so angry about everything. And I don't really know why. I mean, I was around then, but obviously
but
I
see, we
wasn't.
can't we can't generalize in that sense because that's based off our own view of the world. So
Yeah,
if you look back through years, even in the 70s and the 60s, there was a lot of angry music, punk
yeah,
rockers and
true.
things
Yeah,
like that. The mods
yeah,
before that, and like, do you know what I mean? So there's always been rebels in society.
yeah,
Look back through thousands of years of history, you'll find the rebels. There's always been rebels. So
yeah,
they'll have always been the ones who sort of go against the grain. They're the ADHD kids from all these other generations who've gone, fuck that, I'm not doing that. And when teenage boys, we've got this sort of presence that appears in us where we've then got to show us we're men. We've got to be, and that should be naturally in all men. If the sort of the bravado of I need to protect myself, because going back into the olden days, women would have been choosing wisely, saying, "Well, I want a man who's going to protect me and me kids. I want a man who's a good hunter." This is going back like hundreds and hundreds of years. He needs to be able to provide for me. He needs to keep me safe. So they're not going to pick someone who's scared to fight something, are they? Fella coming back every night going, I couldn't catch nothing again. I've got just some snails or something like that. It's like, that's not how it works. So this is the dominance, isn't it, of men sort of beating the chest. But nowadays, men are like, well, why am I doing it? So you've got some men who've got the higher testosterone level where they're sort of banging the chests. But they tend to be the ones who are in the mosh pits. They tend to be the ones who are sort of boisterous, aren't they? But they're also the same sort of mentality from a different society, maybe, or a different sort of background, where them type of lads might then play rugby, or they might do martial arts, or they might cut. But all their stories, all their life goes into pain or suffering, or so they've attached music with getting hurt. Like I went to see Rage Against the Machine years ago, and I hadn't even heard who they are, but it was sort of a last minute thing. And I remember that was the first experience of a mosh pit, and this was when it was MTV and all stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So I'd only seen stuff like that on telly, and they didn't used to show how bad. And I'm like, this is brilliant because my mentality at the time was just like, this is. I'm like jumping in and getting chinned and all that. Like this is such a good night.
yeah,
But see, I was attaching it to like the sort of how I felt. So it
yeah,
was attaching that fun come with pain, fun
yeah,
come with physical pain, and like obviously when you're sparring in gyms and you're getting kicked and punched all the time, you start learning that your body can take this. Now, if you've got a gang of lads who've been to see Rage Against the Machines, and then you've got a gang of lads who are the same age, but they've gone to see a classical opera, have they got the same mindset? Who's to say Who's to say the lads who like Rage Against the Machine don't also like classical sometimes? But straight away,
oh,
even
yeah,
by just given that example, you've jumped to conclusions, haven't you?
yeah, yeah. No, no, you've
Who's
got
to
me
say
there.
these
Yeah.
classical music lads aren't all fucking meatheads or like dead hard?
We
But
all have our
straight
own,
away,
you
you
know
think,
what? We all have our own frustrations in life, and that's one thing I've learned is that you can't put people in boxes, which I know ironically I just did there. But when you think about personas in the world, you think, oh well, yeah, The Breakfast Club is another great movie that gets to the heart of this. I think we've spoken about The
yeah,
Breakfast
yeah.
Club. It's one of my favorite films. But you look at John Bender, who's like the guy who's like, the metalhead. He's got the leather gloves on, like fingers, is it like with the holes in? And
Think that's good, yeah.
yeah, he's got the fingerless gloves on. He's got the denim jacket on. He's dead edgy. Then you've got Emilio Estevez's
But
character.
see,
Who's
I
like,
used to describe him, so just stick with him for a
yeah,
second.
yeah, yeah.
So, what do you think of his character? Because you just said he's edgy. So, what does edgy mean to you?
Do you know what? In the context of who he is as a high school student, and this is obviously revealed in the film, I think of Edgy as being he's got a lot of insecurity and there's a lot of like a big chip on his shoulder, but he wants the world to think he's confident and in control, where he's cocky and not in control. Now that's what I think of him, even from what before I knew all of that. The moment I laid eyes on him, because I watched it as an adult. Maybe if you watch it as a kid, you think of it differently and you get sucked into a false narrative. But I remember looking at him and thinking, this is clearly a guy who's having problems at home, having problems internally, but he wants to show everyone how strong and big and powerful he is. And he goes to, gigs and goes in the mosh pits and everything like that. That was my
But see, if you didn't have that awareness and you're watching as, say, like a teenager, because that's another film where I think they were all like in the late 30s playing teenage kids or
Yeah,
something,
they
isn't it?
never
But
like 20s, 30s.
yeah,
Yeah,
but like, so you've just described him, but the impression I got when you were describing it was almost like the word that come into my mind was cool. Like you were
yeah.
describing it, he's the cool one. But if you got well out and bought them clothes tomorrow, and then you go to the pub on Sunday dressed like him, who's thinking you're cool?
Almost certainly nobody.
But see the film Grease and things like that, and they're all wearing leather jackets, aren't they? And they're all smoking ciggies with their hair gelled up and all things like that. But if you look at the generations, within a few short years, you sort of go, my favourite saying, you go from being a king to a Ming. You straight away, it's not cool anymore. So when that happens, you sort of keep falling and going, who am I meant to be? Like, I've said to my daughter a few times, because she's turning 19 this month, and it's like, I've said to her in a very funny way, in a comedy way, not being serious, but I've said, kids from your generation, when she describes what some of her mates are like or what they do, I'm like, you just wouldn't have survived when I was like my age. Because they're just so mollycoddled and they're just like that. I'm like, oh, I just wish like it was that easy back then. Like, look at the choice young people have got.
But
Like,
do you
when I
but do
was
you but do
younger,
you wish it was
we
that
were
easy
made up
though?
as, what,
Do you
sorry?
do you wish it was that easy though? Because I always believe that, it's what makes you who you are. Like I've had people ask me before, and just going back to something you said much earlier on about autism, because I've been diagnosed with Asperger's, and people say to me, "Well, would you wish that you didn't have that?" And I'm like, "Well, no, because it's who I am, and I don't use it to define me. I'm not really that big into labels, but you just don't really know, because people will say, 'Oh, well, what if I was a kid
But
today?'
see, but see the traits of being diagnosed with that. And I hope you don't mind me like sharing this because it's not really
Yeah,
going into
yeah,
about any. But the difference, and this is what I said last week in the first like part of it, is like the proofs in the pudding. That's how I work as a person, because I can't go around bullshitting someone saying I can get you to where I want, where you can get to. But I can see already the difference in someone within a few weeks of coming to me, because what they get told, loads of people who come to me being diagnosed with all kinds, and I often say to people at the end, or even at the point that you're at, where it's like you only really need these slight bits to keep you on path, because you already, for me, you're a totally different man than the one who I met, like significantly though, where I don't believe that a lot of the things that you used to associate with Asperger's and sort of the effects it had on you, I don't feel affect you day to day anymore, because you've learned how to deal with it and make the best out of the way you feel. I've done it with PTSD. I've done it with my ADHD. I don't feel like them two labels affect my life. My PTSD affects me sleep, which I can't really control with like having nightmares sometimes and waking up and sweats and things like that. But in my day to day, they don't come into it anymore, because where I used to be triggered in the past, the thing with PTSD is I go into fight or flight. There's never a freeze for me. It's always fight or flight. But because of me past of saying I don't want to run away from anything, it's always been to fight. Now, fighting is not necessarily fight, it's just to defend yourself, really. So when you're sitting in your own living room and no one's affecting you, no one's fighting with you, but you're stuck in fight, you've got to learn a way to relax yourself. You've got to learn a way to be nice to yourself rather than live into it and go, oh my God, like I used to have loads of feelings like that thing, and I'm like, am I going mad? But as soon as I learned self-care, as soon as I learned how to speak to myself in a nicer way, I become that empathetic voice that I'd always needed. I become that loving voice that I always needed for me. And the more I've done that, the better I am at my job, the better I am at life, because I can handle any situation. They might be painful, but you get through them because they pass. You've got to stay true to yourself. You've got to have good intentions. Don't waste your time being angry at other people. Don't waste your time being pissed off with other people. Just accept people for who they are. And you've got to be the best version of you. If you live your life more that way, how can it not be better?
well,
Stop taking responsibility for other people's lives. Stop judging people by your own expectations of your rules. Other people won't live to your rules, and you don't dictate to other people your rules. They don't dictate them to you. That's what we should all agree. We should say, right, We've all got different opinions. Rather than judge each other on them, let's accept the fact that we all think in a different way. In a family household, everyone thinks differently. But why do we all act under the same umbrella? Oh, well, they're all them people, aren't they? Or they're them. No, they're not. We're generalizing. People aren't all the same. So we're all unique, but we've all got similarities. And that's what we've got to identify. Our similarities are sort of what base our thoughts run off, aren't they?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if you feel you're in a room and you feel disliked, no one said you're disliked, but what's making you feel disliked?
It's you. And again, I go back
So
to it.
think what thoughts though. So think what thoughts you'd feel. Just like two words that your thoughts would suggest for you to feel not liked in a room. You're in a room with strangers, no one's being aggressive to you, no one's even spoke to you, but you feel these people in this room don't like me.
Well, that's the Breakfast Club again. I go back to it. The Breakfast Club is like that, where you create your own hostility, and I think it really is a fitting portrayal of life in that sense, in that it's the voice in your head that's creating a certain hostility, but because of things that have happened before, but then which you've magnified in your own head and made a million times worse, and then you carry that with you, and sometimes. I've said things in the past or I've done things in the past that have really annoyed people, and I've had to think to myself, was that me? Did I do that, or did they do that? And that this was before I'd gone through therapy, and I was kind of thinking, I mean, look, we all have to take accountability for things that we do in life that hurt others, especially if we know we're doing it, which hopefully most people don't. But it's like how much of that is you and how much of that is them. A lot of the time, a large chunk of that lies with them and their own kind of associations with a particular
So how
word.
do you think you learn that? So how do you think you learn that? Using that as the example, what made you learn that that behaviour wasn't acceptable to others?
Well, is in with my behavior when I would annoy
Mm.
people when they would. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
And see how you say, no, what I'm saying is, what were you saying you were annoying people, or were you getting feedback of others saying you're annoying me?
yeah, a bit of both. Yeah, so it would be feedback along those lines,
So
and
think of the feedback though and think who it's off. Now, does this person like you for a start? That's what you've got to say. So if someone's giving me advice and they're friendly, I'm a lot more inclined to listen to them if they're being friendly. Now, if
yeah,
someone goes, "Hey, Nobed, I don't like your top," I wouldn't be as inclined to go, "I'm going to take fashion tips off this person."
that was
Now,
actually
if
that
they've
was
got,
going to be my next question. Actually, I was going to ask you that. Hey, Nobed, what's with the deal with the top? So I'm glad you
yeah.
answered that question.
So see, there you go. So you got your answer. The truth of it is that we attach to things and we try and normalize. So if your friends are all wearing like an Under Armour top, we'll stick with brands. Brands are just made up. We don't know what they are. We don't know what follow. I go for things based on material. So I like to touch material first. I'm not modern enough in my process to go, I'm going to order this online and then hopefully it's going to feel like I want it to feel. So I'm a bit old school where I like to actually go to a shop and feel it. That's more being in the here and now for me. It's being more natural. If you're going to buy fruit and veg, you should be looking at your vegetables and looking if they're fresh, and you should be able to tell without looking at a date on a bag. So I do believe in this because it's our human nature. So I'm more involved in trusting ourselves. So anything, and it's something as small as that, trusting yourself to be able to pick the right thing. Now, who are you going to let down if you don't?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why is it so important?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
see, if you've got 100 of these things to do each day, and men and women all over the world do this. They put so much pressure on themselves. I've got to do this today. I've got to do that today. Now, when you do that, you're more likely to crash a car. You're
Yeah.
more likely to have an accident.
Yeah.
So the laws, unfortunately, they can be wrong when it comes to driving because we blame things too much. So we'll go drink drivers, drug drivers, people who are sort of speeding or people who are doing that. A lot of crashes. Now it's terrible for people who have done them in that situation, but what I'm getting at is most people who crash is because they're not paying attention. So driving is one of the easiest things. When you've drove for years and years, it's one of the easiest things if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
But if you're busy, so many people go, "Oh, I drove to work and I can't even remember driving there." So that's
Yeah.
a bit dangerous, isn't it? Or you're thinking of all the things you need from the supermarket when you're driving there. Are you fully paying attention? So if someone pulls out on you, have you got that reaction time to stop? So as we get older, you see this in older generations, it slows them down. So how many like old people have you seen driving and they're driving past you and they're concentrating, but they might think they're doing fast because their brain's seeing all this new stuff and they might be driving along going, I'm going fast here. But in reality, they might only be driving 20 mile an hour because their consciousness isn't keeping up with the actual outside world. The eyes aren't bringing the details back enough, so they slow down. Now, I believe this starts even at a younger age. How many times have you reversed your car, but you lower your music? Or when you're concentrating on the sat nav, you lower your music.
Yeah.
So you need to concentrate more. So we have all these little techniques to concentrate more. But I think as we age, we're quite hard on ourselves. So we're not truthful. So this back to the home truths again. So we don't want to get old. So how many people like admitting their age? How many people want other people to guess their age? It's all bullshit, isn't it? Because when someone says, "Oh, guess my age," they never want you to say older than you are.
Exactly. No, never. God, yeah.
So if someone's about 40 and you go, "Oh, you look about 98," it's safer because it's a joke. They're nowhere near 98, but you're not offending them. But sometimes it shocks you where someone's going, "Oh, why did they want you to know?" I don't really think age is significant. I think it's more about how we are as a person because I don't feel my age. I feel about 200. After all the work I've done, I feel like I'm at the wisdom level of about 200 where I'm like, what's going on? But my body actually feels well younger now than it did 16 years ago. I
Yeah.
feel well better shape now. I feel a lot healthier. I feel a lot more relaxed. I don't get all these pains like that I used to get. I used to suffer with my back. I used to suffer with my stomach. I don't suffer with these things on that first session. I was suffering then because I was getting over this cold. I was coughing all the time. So my energy level, I knew that I could still do the podcast. I could still work. But then after it, I sort of had to relax. I had to sort of reward myself by letting myself relax and have something nice to eat. But I don't bombard myself. So every time I'm doing things and I'm busy, it always comes with a rest period. Now, when you're working out in the gym, you don't just constantly, from the minute you get in the gym, just keep lifting weights because your arms get tired. You're not as strong anymore. So you have rests in between, don't you? So that's what I try and teach everyone to do with their lives, is learn how to have rests, learn how to sort of, instead of self-sabotage, to self-care. So being nicer to yourself, just small steps, having your favourite cake and saying, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like, treat yourself more. Like, so many people will go, oh, I love this meal, but I haven't had it for ages. Why? So if you're self-sabotaging, that's a small scale of how depression works, isn't it? So if we just stop enjoying everything we enjoy, we don't have anymore.
Feels
How's
like
our
punishing
life happy?
yourself. Feels like punishing yourself a bit, doesn't it? Because like when I've been really depressed, I've been like, oh well, even times where something good's happened, and I've said to myself, "You're a bad person. You don't deserve this." Or then you go, "Oh, number of days without a cheat meal." I hate when people say the word cheat meal. It fucking annoys the hell out of me, to be
But
honest.
see, it implies though that, as I said again, it's your words that are your poison. So the saying, oh, you are what you eat. I've always questioned it. I question everything. So it's like, I used to think, how are you what you eat? I'm not sitting in McDonald's going, I'm a chicken nugget now. I'm a Mac chip now or whatever. We don't do that. But you are what you eat is sort of true for words. So if you're eating all these bad words about yourself,
Yeah.
how do you think you feel? So we eat these more than bad foods, and these bad foods or these bad sort of events that we go to where people judge themselves, who party or drink and all things like that. I say, who's judging you? If you accept something, if you don't accept it and you think it's terrible, 100% don't do it. But if it's something you like doing, but it comes with negative thoughts, that's a bit of evil on yourself because you know you're going to do it again, but you're going to heavily judge yourself again. So I always try and get people to sort of cut that and say, well, what's wrong about it? And normally they'll go back and tell how the parents felt about stuff, how the grandparents felt about stuff. So is it their judgment that they're judging themselves with, or is it some sort of adult who's took over their thought process going, you shouldn't be doing that?
Yeah.
Now, if we always listen when people said you shouldn't be doing that, whoever's telling you not to do it is only projecting their view on life.
Yeah.
So this is about everything, every single thing externally isn't as important as internally. How can it be? If your internal thought, if your mind says whether you like something or you don't, where's the external part? And that surely we've got to realise that that comes from our insides, that comes from who we are. If you say I like this food, I don't like that food, where's that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
But if you've never tried the food you say you don't like, isn't that restricting you from trying new things?
Exactly. Yeah.
So someone who says, oh, like the friends say, right, we're going to go to this club. And this one friend goes, oh no, I've heard that club shit. Let's not go. So them friends might go, oh, okay, we'll listen to you this week. But then the next week they go, let's go to this club. And the friend goes, no, shit. So have you been? No. So how do you know? Oh, someone told me.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, we won't
I've had
go.
this before with music where I've said to people like, "Oh, I hate that band. Well, have you ever
Hmm.
actually listened to a single song by them?" No, I just think they're shit because I don't like the
But
vibe they
see
give
that
off.
word, hate. Why would you ever hate a band?
Yeah, you don't exactly. Don't even
Why
know.
would you ever hate a food?
Yeah,
Why would you ever hate a stranger?
I do. I
But we
do
do.
hate. Thing is, I do hate liver. So I don't know if I can say that I
So,
hate. I mean,
so,
I
so
do
you
hate that.
don't hate it. So see how strong that word is.
I hate the
There's no
taste.
reason for you to hate liver. Is anyone force feeding you liver?
No, no. Thank God.
So you don't need to hate it. What you can say is that your taste buds don't get good sensations off it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if we describe that to people like he's a bit weird, isn't he? I only asked him, does he like liver? Where personally, like I like most foods, but when I was younger, I was quite fussy because I didn't trust foods as much. I didn't sort of like get the choice that we've got now. When you said before, like, would I want the difference? No, I wouldn't change anything in my life. Everything's a lesson in my life. But when I look at the younger generations and I think of how much choice they've got, no, I'm not really jealous of that because too much choice spoils our mind. Because your thoughts aren't generally happy with what you've got. Then how many people are actually happy with what they've got ever?
Mm.
So car, clothes, house, holidays, bank account. So if you're living every day where don't like me job, don't like me house, don't like me car, don't like this, don't like that, where's the happiness?
Yeah.
But yet you still stick doing it. My brain's just never been able to stay. So when I used to have jobs when I worked for companies before I was self-employed, when I used to quit, I'd quit instantly. I didn't get the point. My logic was like, if I don't want to work here anymore, why the fuck am I going to come in for another week or 2 weeks to give you notice?
Yeah.
If I've decided that I don't want to work here now, I'm gone.
Well, I've had this before where I had a 3 month notice period somewhere I worked, and it was just soul destroying. I like for 2 of the 3 months, I didn't want to be there. In fact, no, I'll go even further than that. For 3 of the 3 months that I was on the notice period, I didn't want to fucking be there, and
Yeah.
yeah,
But see, what was making you go? So see, when I used to want to go, when I didn't want to go to school, especially when I got into like, I was over 13, 14, and I realised that my house was empty of the daytime. I'm like, I'm not going to school some days. And no one will know because our house was empty. Everyone had gone to work. So I was like, I can just go back. So sagging off back then wasn't like it is now. Schools weren't getting paid per child back then. So truancy wasn't seen as the same thing. The schools would just be like, they weren't as bothered. So for me, I found that peaceful. I found I was showing myself even as a teenager, I can control my life a bit here. That was probably the only control over my life I had of deciding whether I wanted to go to school or not. Now, thankfully for me, now I'm not advising if there is any kids watching, which I hope there's not because we swear on stuff, but it's
yeah,
like
hopefully not, yeah.
kids like that, what the fuck's this? But like, it's like that mindset why would, if I'd have agreed and I'd have kept going to this school system that I didn't agree with, that might have had me more inclined to stick in a job that I didn't want to do. But I also had, which I mentioned the last time, I spent a lot of time with me nan, and I remember me nan telling me loads of stories about how many jobs she'd had, and she'd go, "You don't like a job? There's always another job." So I was listening to her, going, "Yeah, that's a good mentality to have." She's like, "Yeah, if you don't want to stay, so you don't stay, you just leave." Because back in her day, that was a thing.
Mm.
She'd start the job in the morning. She'd be like, "I had a different job in the afternoon," you know, because it was like, but it's not like that nowadays. So I get it for younger people. They might live in this fear going, "Well, it's not that easy." It was never that easy for me. I would quit and not even think for a minute, well, what am I going to do for money? What am I going to do tomorrow? I would just trust the fact that I will get on the phone and I will find new work. And I always did.
Mm.
So these periods of like not being employed, they didn't happen. The only time I've not been employed in life was when I hurt my back, when I had the back injury and I physically couldn't for a long time till I built up the strength to start working again. But I didn't take that. I got told on my 30th birthday, MRI results, you'll never work again. You've got the back of a 70-year-old. I slipped 2 discs in my lower back when I was 27 in America, and that's why I had to come home. So I was written off. And I always say this, and I never wanted to come across, but as soon as the surgeon sold me, I said in my head, fuck you. Now, I ended up getting to know this fella. He was really good. He put me on a pain management course, and that pain management course was sort of my first insight into questioning who I was. I remember this physio on the course, and like, I'm doing a pain management course. I'm like 30 at the time. And a lot of the people on the course were pensioners and people who've been suffering with pain their whole lives. And I wasn't taking painkillers. So they're like in the room, and this surgeon, he sort of run the group. It's a brilliant thing. Anyone who ever gets offered to do pain management course, I'd go on it, because I learned a lot about my life. I learned a lot about myself, but I got made to believe in myself again. This fellow went to me, he was like, "You're well stronger than you're telling yourself." He was like, "You're not made out of glass, you know." So I started pushing myself a bit more and sort of started doing loads of work in my flat on like core exercises and things like that. So I want everyone to believe that there's a stronger version of themselves and it's locked inside. No matter what we're tested on, that's our test in life. You can come out on top. No matter what happens in life, you can come out on top. It's not on top of anybody else, it's on top of you. It's sort of like you can get past that stage. All our times when we think we're going to fail, that's if you come out of that situation where you thought you were going to fail, winning, that's the lesson.
Well, that
And
I mean,
the more you control your thoughts, the easier it becomes, because your thoughts can either work in your favour or against you. If your thoughts are working against you, everything's an uphill battle. Every client at the beginning says to me, "Jesus, I feel like I'm going 3 steps forward, 2 steps back," and everyone's doing these same things because they're learning them, but they're actively learning. And
yes.
when you learn, how do you get that 2 steps forward without going back? And it takes time, doesn't it? So the more repetition, as I'm always saying, gets you further along the line. And the more you repetitively do something, the better you get at it.
Yeah, active learning is great. That's actually something really interesting in what you said there that I think viewers can take a lot from. It's like if you're trying to, influence your mind and thoughts in a positive way, active learning goes an awfully long way, as I found out from my own experience. And that was pretty much the answer to my final question that I had, which was just around, what do you want the key takeaway or takeaways to be? Like what's the kind of overarching message that you'd like people to take from this episode?
Yeah. So basically to round it all off, because I do think I feel like we've done a good job there, like sort of revealing how thoughts work and that sort of how the mind and that consciousness of your mind. Now, anyone who's listening to this, thank you for watching it all, because the idea of these videos, it's sort of in a way, it's like a bit of free therapy for people. So
Yeah.
just someone questioning their own thoughts. Don't question the outside world as much. You need to look inwards for this. This is not about blaming anyone. I said this in the first podcast. It's not about projecting this onto anybody else. See this video individually, watch it for yourself, and go, do I do this? Am I quite negative to myself? And just please try, just for an example, for your own benefit, try being nice to yourself for a day. Now, if you struggle being nice to yourself for one day, you will benefit from speaking to someone externally because you need your thoughts breaking down. That's all I do for people. I say their thoughts out loud, and people are like, geez, I bully myself. Most people bully themselves on a daily basis. Like I've literally said to a client once, did you used to take your own dinner money off yourself in school? Because he bullied himself that much with his thoughts. And the difference in this fella, once he'd done, and he didn't even have to come to me for, I think he was coming to me for about 6 months, and he just got onto the fact of how much his thoughts were ruining his own day to day. Soon as he got onto the fact of giving himself these little rewards, giving these self little treats, not judging himself when he's enjoying himself, stop ruining your own good nights by analysing, oh, I could have done this better. I could have, why are we doing that? Learn how to enjoy your nights. Learn how to accept that we're not consistently great all the time. We might say the wrong words. Also, learn how to deal with shame. Self-shaming is a big one. No one's asked what you're doing. So try and embarrass yourself. Fall over in the street. No one gives a shit. You might get filmed, but no one's helping you up, unfortunately, nowadays, because they're two in their own zone. No, I'm not speaking to them. So it's be more conscious of your thoughts, be more conscious of who you are as a person. Try and find as many things as you like, similar to what I said on the last one, rather than all the things you don't like. But also stop forcing your opinion on other people. Sit back for a second and understand the facts, show them respect and go, just because your opinion's different than mine doesn't mean I don't have to like you. This is the problem in society. We don't like people because they've got a different opinion. That's not fair. Respect the fact that other people have got values and beliefs different than yours and go, wow, is that how you see the world? Oh, well, that's good. I've learned a little bit today. I learn off everybody who I ever communicate with because my way is right for me, but I would never dictate to someone else that my way is right for them. I don't say that to my daughter. I don't say that to my son. Don't say that to people because that's not fair. I want to understand their way they're seeing the world. I want to have that understanding, and that's what I offer people. So it's about offering it to yourself. I had to learn this myself. I had to offer it to me before I could do it for my job.
Yeah.
Personal development is what your life's about. You owe it to you to be nice to yourself, to look after yourself, to give yourself the answers. You've got all your answers. Anything you feel like you can supply. But if you depend on the world to supply it for you, you could be waiting forever. Because they don't know, especially if you don't say it out loud. So hopefully this helps people, and hopefully people relate it into the way I want it for them. This is not about me or me only. It's about you. It's about whoever's watching it, sort of realizing how powerful their thoughts are. So if they're so powerful in a negative way, imagine how powerful they're going to be in a positive way.
That's brilliant, Paul. Thank you so much for putting the time
Thank
aside.
you for your time, Neil.
Yeah, no, I really do appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure again.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and obviously sorry for using you as the guinea pig in some of it, but obviously when you ask me the questions, I think you are the voice for a lot of the people who'll be viewing it. I'm speaking from my profession, whereas I take a lot of the things I know for granted, so I'm always open to answer any questions. Anyone who sort of relates to it in their own way, by all means, get in touch. But
yeah, on that point, how can people reach out to you if they want to contact you about
the best way, if it's about therapy in itself, you can go through the professional manners of the BACP's own website. Counselling Directory is one of my main sources. Psychology Today. Personal message me by all means, as long as you give me a little brief about what you're going through or what type of help you feel you need.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, I don't really want anyone commenting because I want this to be going into their own mind. If someone wants to know more, they can go down the right route of doing it because, as I said, comments on videos tend to be quite negative. You can get trolling, you can get all these other stuff. So we're not really interested in that part. It's how you interpret it. If you feel you've got to share your opinion, ask yourself why before you do. About anything. If you're phoning BBC up because someone's farted on the news, ask yourself why you're doing that before you do it. So just a little message for people. We need to get rid of that judgmental mentality and be a bit more open and go, yeah, each to their own.
We do also have the powerofonepod@gmail.com email address, which I'll be monitoring, you'll be monitoring. So and if anyone wants to reach out about anything.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll start putting some on Instagram and things like that, and little snippets and maybe shorter videos, because obviously we appreciate anyone who's going to watch it. But like anything nowadays, you've got the beauty of pausing it, going back to it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to watch everything in full. It can sort of be when you're going for a walk, however you want to listen to it. But the idea is it's about you. Whoever's listening, it's about you. It's not about us. So don't be trying to justify anything. Don't be trying to moan at yourself about anything. Just listen with open ears and go, is this going to help me? If you feel it's not, I guarantee it's the negative thought saying this won't help you. But who you listening to? But yeah, brilliant. Thanks for your time, mate. And I've really enjoyed it again. And I already can't wait to do the next one.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Paul. And thank you
But
to
yeah.
everyone watching.